Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing excellent. I'm doing super excellent today because if you didn't see the last video, the engine is in the FC. Transmission is mounted, drive shaft is even back in, and we are getting so close. So today, what I want to do is I want to finish dressing up the engine. Now, I dressed it up a little bit with sensors and things that were hard to reach before I put it in the car, but now we need to connect all the extra lines like power steering. I want to see if we can get the AC lines connected. We're going to be working on the fuel system today. So recently, you guys saw me getting this ID 750F fuel filter put in here and making some hard lines to connect it to our stock fuel lines and converting those stock fuel lines to AN. I also was working with some hard line to make adapters to connect to the fuel rails themselves. And since then, we've actually got the rear fuel pump hanger modified to AN and ran AN to those lines. And I switched over to using PTFE fuel hose because I just couldn't bear to risk messing up this engine, the fuel injectors, that sort of thing. And having to constantly get in and service those lines and replace them all the time to prevent them breaking down. So with that in mind, I'm going to be rethinking the hard lines when and where I'm using them and make new PTFE lines for the rest of the connections. It shouldn't take too long. After a lot of practice, I'm getting pretty decent at doing so. And then we're also going to be routing the Haltech harness. So the premium harness that I got is great. It's laid out up here. You can already see I got some P-clamps, so we're getting ready for that. But it is oversized so that it can be easily fit. I edited this one unlike the first one I installed, so there shouldn't be anything here like the oil metering pump and extra bits and bobs that we're not going to be connecting. So there shouldn't be extra wires hanging everywhere. However, it can still be a bit of a bear to get it to look good. So I'm going to take a lot more time doing that. And then we're also going to get the accessory bracket back on with the accessories bolted on. And the reason I want to get to that is that we need to, in the future video, if you didn't see one of our previous videos, sorry I'm talking so fast, I'm excited. We made a V-mount intercooler setup, but we mocked it up on the burnt FC. So once we get it in here, I'm already looking around and going, okay, we've got to account for this part of the wiring harness. We have an AC line that comes through here. And then once it is in place, once we figure out those things, we're going to need to route an intake pipe through this section. I'm not so concerned from over here because this is pretty much complete and we're just going to have the outlet from the compressor go in here, goes to the intercooler, comes right here, and goes back there. But through this area is going to be difficult. So I need to get everything prepped up for that, and it should make a pretty satisfying video as a side effect of that. So I'm going to get started connecting everything together.
Start it up.
So now that we got the accessories back in place, I can really start routing and working on everything else. So I think I want to start with, I think I'll finishing up the fuel system. So right now, this is the feed line, and I just have it looped to the return because it kept leaking gas. But what we need to do is get this. This is just a temporary loop. It was going to the stock fuel line, which is what this is, with like a push lock fitting screwed in. So what I need to do is get this to a Y at some point, which will go to both the fuel rails, and then when the fuel rails come off, they come off individually to both sides of the fuel pressure regulator, and then that needs to go back down into the return line here, and in between there I need to get this flex fuel sensor. So I need to do some figuring out of stuff and figure out how I'm going to put this all together. But like I said, I've had lots of practice now, so I think this is going to go pretty well. Let me start playing Legos with the fuel system pieces and I'll figure it out. So it certainly is Legos, like I was mentioning, but I think I got it figured out. So let me show you. Right down here, I took this U-turn piece and just flipped it up. So this is the feed, so I'm going to start from the beginning. So I'm going to attach a PTFE line from here. It's going to tuck right along the firewall, go right in here, right behind this heater hose, and connect right in here to this Y, connected to these hard lines to feed our fuel rails. Now, from the fuel rails, I am missing 2 fittings. So I have to go around this coolant feed for the turbo. So it needs to come up around here, which I've done before. It's not a big deal. And then this one also, I need U-turn fittings or 180-degree fittings that come around like this. And in the kits I bought, I didn't have those. So I ordered those. They'll be here in a few days. So they're going to U-turn. The lines are going to come down here. We're going to have one from the top come into this return line here. One from the bottom is going to come along here. We're going to use this to put a P-clamp to hold it, and it's going to come up here into this. It's like a swoop right here, so we'll hold it around here and it'll come around backing up kind of like that, because this needs to be angled back because of the throttle body and everything. And then this is the return. So I have a 90 to a 45. It's still loose here, but it's going to come up right out of the top here. Just tuck right along the firewall. Come here, right in here. Okay, this goes down to the flex fuel sensor, and the flex fuel sensor here is like stuck right in here by this AC line. And what's cool about this is that there's multiple ways I can secure it there a little bit, but it's already really strong because this hard line down here, I converted to AN, and it's got a 90 and it's coming up right here. So this thing is like, doesn't move. And so I have easy access to the plug. I can rotate this a little bit to change the angle around and whatnot. And then, yeah, so that completes the fuel system. So I need to make a PTFE line from here to here, here to here, and then get those 2 fittings from here to here. But for now, that gives me an idea of where that's all going to fit. Oh, actually, let me put the upper intake manifold on so you can see how it does all clear. It's just pretty tight. Just a second. Upper intake manifold is back on. Don't mind the vacuum lines. I just pre-ran them because once I tighten things down, it's a pain in the butt to try and get my hand back here, because you can see this is where the fuel pressure regulator is. We have the mechanisms there for the throttle body, and you can see none of them are touching, and they will not touch even when the fuel line comes up right here, so that's great. And there's a little bracket here which I've just been cleaning off for the throttle cable, which is sitting up here right now, and that will not touch either. So it's nice, compact. This is 90-degree AN fitting, or excuse me, NPT fitting I have for the fuel pressure sensor, because it's pretty big and I don't want it to come off here. I'm not sure if it'll fit this way. If not, I'll rotate it this way and put it this way. I can probably even remove this, but I'm just trying not to. Remove all the extra stuff on the throttle body because it helps a lot with drivability, and this is a street car. So yeah, I'm excited for that. So now I can go ahead and start routing the wiring to all the sensors. And that is a whole nother set of fun puzzle solving. So it's early morning the next day. Yesterday was warm, I was in shorts and everything. Today is raining outside. But that's great because I'm going to spend all day inside working on this motor some more. So I left you with kind of terminating the fuel system, or the idea for the fuel system, still waiting for some parts. But now I've been running the wiring harness, and let me tell you, it is going really well. So I'm going to give you a little rundown here. I'm going to move this upper intake manifold. All right, so the harness I have coming out of here, still trying to deal with this grommet that's too small, but anyway, when I first used this harness, it was on the other FC, and it was obviously coming out of this side because the driver and passenger side is switched, but it seems to be fitting better coming out on the right-hand drive configuration. So as it comes down here, I have obviously some areas. This is for the ethanol sensor and the oil pressure, and I need to, like, there's so much slack there, so I'm trying to consider on connections where it's like this, do I just bring it all the way back and repin it, which is what I think I want to do if I have enough pins, because I don't have that many, or just cut and splice and do that, or just wrap all the wires like this into a bundle with some Tessa tape like that. Have the ignition over here. We're going to be working on that a little bit later. And then some really long leads sticking off, like this is for the tachometer and oil temp. Obviously there's tons of length left there, so we're going to be able to route those exactly where they need to go, cut those off. And the fan relay trigger way up here. But as we move further along, you can see, what's this one? So I need to tidy this up a little bit, but we have the map sensor, which comes right off here. I have it tied back a little bit, and I need to repin that to work with this type of connection. And then over here we have fuel pressure. But down here we have the main part of the harness. So I have it coming right along here. I'm going to get some P-clamps right here to hold this in place. And right here, you can kind of see what I'm working towards. So for the injectors, I have a P-clamp here holding this wiring in place, and also for the coolant temp sensor. And same thing for here. I threw a couple up here to hold these in place so the wires are nice and neat. What's really cool, at least for me being a huge nerd, is this is the crank angle sensor trigger, and I, previous video, remade this harness, but I think I can just pin it directly on, because look how good and tight of a connection that is going to be, like no slack. Additionally, the intake air temperature sensor is going to come up right here, which goes on the bottom here. Same thing with the TPS, which is somewhere here, right here. TPS, that connects right here. So these are all routing really well. And then last one I have, a big bundle down here, is for the boost control solenoid. So everything is going really well with that. I'm very excited because it's going to look much neater, but it's still plenty of tedious work to do. Right up here I've got some more P-clamps, so I'm going to be able to see. So this 1-inch one I think is going to be good to attach this whole main loom to these bolt holes here and make it nice and neat. The only thing that's even more tedious about that is that I have to widen the holes on all the P-clamps because none of the bolts fit through, so I have to sit there with a Dremel. But it's worth it. Like, this amount of time taken to do this is going to make it look so much cleaner and be so much more organized and neater, and yeah, I'm excited about that. So anyway, I'm going to get back to work. Might put some of it on camera, but I think more focused on the finished result for that, because I still in this video want to move to the ignition coil so we can get that all set up. And the ignition harness is its own set of wires, which I have over here. And by the way, I got this tool chest, and I was really excited about it because I was going to move it next to the car, but I kept it over there, and I'm standing inside the engine bay to work on all this stuff. And so I have to climb over, get out, and I was like, wait a minute, I moved it here, and God, it's so much better. It's exactly like I thought. I just pull this out, shoop, doop, 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 whatever I need. It's making things much easier. But this is the wiring harness for the ignition. So I have to figure out where all this is going to go, plus all the coils, and make that nice and neat as well. So plenty more to go. I'll be back shortly. So it's been a few more hours. I've got everything really well secured. It's looking great. I got a lot of things shortened so they work much better with not a lot of slack here. And just need to wire in the oil temp sensor when I get that. But that's enough on that. Now I need to move over to the ignition. So I've already been making a mess and occupied my full worktop, so I've got it down here on the ground. This is the old burnt mess, and I just took the new one and correspondingly labeled everything for the trailing and leading coils here. I'm gonna get ready to route this through the engine bay as well. This is made by Sake Bomb. It's really high quality. In addition, I have their spark plug wires here, and this is a mount I made that went on the other FC, and I'm just inclined to use it again because it fits really well. I just basically need to relocate this main relay, which is not hard, and basically it fits right in here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and mount that up and then clear out some of the wires from the main relay, relocate that, and then start routing this through the whole engine bay. Well, it doesn't need to go far actually, because the ignition connector is, where'd it go? Oh, it's hanging down here. It's right here. This is the whole system. It just needs power, which we get from here, and ground, which goes to the engine block. So it should be pretty tidy as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get these things moved around and mounted up. So this is the area where I'm going to be mounting that bracket I just showed you, and the main relay was up here. I just moved it down here to the shock tower, and then we have one more ground here. Probably don't need all these things anymore, but I just like to keep them, so I'll throw that there or on there as well. And we have room for that there. And then the other thing is, since we have to pull power off the fuse block, or rather our power distribution here, I had already intended to do this, but I thought I'd just stop and show you what I did. So this assembly originally sits here, and it sticks off the edge here, and this is where we're going to have to very tightly pass intercooler piping, but I think now we're going to be able to pass it through there. So I just moved it back here. I just modified this bracket it mounts to, and then I hung some angle aluminum off the front and rib nutted it, because this was just zip tied on here, and now I'm going to be able to bolt it on there right like that. And we're still able to use a lot of the stock wire routing clips with these releasable zip ties to take the power steering harness wires and everything else that runs off this fuse block right up in here, including our power distribution. So it's actually looking really good. So I'm just going to bolt this all together and then put the wiring in for the ignition. All right, I'm almost done with the ignition install, and it's looking great as with everything else. So I'm super happy with how everything's going. I know I keep saying that, but so here we go. Got the relay mounted up here. The ignition harness connector just sits right down here, nice and tucked away. Got the main relay relocated, everything grounded is reconnected, and able to use some stock reusable zip tie things that are mounted on the body to hold everything nice and tight. Grounds all ran to the engine. We've got the harness ground for the Haltech, and then we've got the ignition grounds. We're going to go ahead and be able to put those in that P-clamp right there and keep these all nice and tucked along. This section here obviously looks a little bit wild, but again, I'm going to continue to tie these things all together and probably wrap it all more in Tessa tape once you get it in its final iteration and I get those final wires terminated. And then up here, so yeah, so here's all the plugs for the coil packs themselves. So those will plug right in from underneath. There's a coil pack sit right here. And then we ran the power just right around here. So the fuse actually sitting over here on the other side of the factory fuse block I relocated, like it looks like it belongs there. And then I just got to get this connected. This guy right here, which is the power in, and that's going to come and just go straight into our power distribution block here. So this I've used on both cars now. It's really great. So this is where the battery is relocated. We're actually going to run one more thick gauge wire from the alternator down through there and right to here, just so we have double checked that, although this is that's what this wire is right here. It's doubled up. And then this is to the battery relocation. So let's see, will this fit over one of these? No, it will not. So just gonna have to Dremel that open a little bit so it'll fit. We'll just bolt it right on there, probably swing it from below so it looks like it's part of all this wiring, and boom, we'll be ready there. So then I'm going to grab the coil packs right there, mount those in, and we're gravy. And just like that, ignition coils are in, everything's connected, and the spark plug wires are even on down there. Again, especially on camera, I can see how this looks messy, and it will get a little bit more cleaned up, but trust me, compared to the stock way the wiring ran and how this harness laid in last time I worked with it, oh, I'm so stoked with it. So I think what I'm going to do is, oh, by the way, earlier I had that bent hardline loop that I was working with on the fuel filter, and I decided to go with just some fittings. I actually ordered a 90 so that this will just come up and go like that. I think it'll look cleaner, and it'll be a little bit, I don't know, just more precise. So that's going to go around there, but I'm going to go ahead and make the lines that I can right now. Obviously I need 2 more fittings, and then pop the upper intake manifold on and just see how complete it actually looks. Alright, so I just put together 2 PTFE lines. I don't know why I avoided it for so long. It is not that difficult. Anyway, so I got the return, or excuse me, the feed coming off the top here. Can you see it with the camera? No. Here it is. Comes up here. Right down here. And into this Y to feed the two rails. And then I have the return finished and all tightened down. So it comes up here, along here, right down here, and into our flex fuel sensor, which is hard mounted. Right into our return line. But I need those two fittings here and here to make the lines up to the regulator right here. But Amazon says that my temporary fittings that I can use to make those will be here tomorrow. So I figure, why not to finish this video, finish those lines, and fire up the Haltech and see if it sees all the sensors and see if we can create and maintain fuel pressure and check for leaks. So I will be back instantaneously. My temporary fittings have arrived. As you can see, they do not match anything else, but they will work to get us up and running and testing this. And I do have black ones ordered, but for now, I'm just gonna pop these right on the end here, like so, and make some lines to go to the fuel pressure regulator. I also received in the mail today my oil temp sensor, so I'm going to go ahead and wire this in, put it right down here on the oil pedestal, and then we're going to be ready to fire this up and test things out. All right. Fuel lines are finished being plumbed. Everything's tightened down. Oil temp sensor is in, wired up. Wiring harness is not finalized yet because I want to check if everything is working before I wrap everything in Tessa tape and make it look nice and pretty. So now it's time to fire things up and see what's working, what's not, what sensors are reading, etc., etc. However, my laptop is in the shop. I dropped it and broke the screen. So what we can do is wait for Jeff to get home and use his laptop, but right now we can get the fuel pump to prime. And although we won't be able to read fuel pressure, we can start checking for leaks. See if there's just a few fittings that need to be tightened down, or if there's something that needs to be remade to save time so we can keep on moving. When Jeff gets home, we will check all those sensors. Yeah, but of course, I've got to fill it with gas first because we finally ran it out of gas. And I've got E85 because we are all set up for E85. I have the correct type of premix in here as well, which is the Motul T2 RC Micro whatever. Already premixed into there. This is going to take two hands or it's going to make a mess. Fueled up. Jeff is getting the software loaded on his new laptop. Jeff's also going to get the FD cleaned off because he's going for a dyno day tomorrow.
So there's a lot of videos we need to catch up on with the FD. Once all the FC stuff passes, we got a lot of FD content.
Yep.
And this was so spur of the moment too.
Well, you got to get it in when you can get it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Your tuner's booked all the time because they're one of the best. All right, so let's turn this on, prime the fuel pump, and see if we're leaking. Connect the battery.
All right, we're all checked up.
Good. All right, fingers crossed. Okay, I heard a sound.
Yeah, I heard a sound too, but it didn't sound like...
Did it sound like leaking?
It sounded like a rush, but it stopped.
Well, there's a fuel pressure regulator, so... I mean, I wouldn't expect like a big dump. I would expect like a dripping. So that's what we're going to inspect for now is
I don't see
drip
anything
drops.
over here. Everything's dry.
Well, we'll give it a second. And it sucks because I spilled gas filling the tank, so I can't do it by smell.
No,
the whole garage
smells
smells
like
like gas. Yeah. All right, we'll be right back. Ran through the fuel system. Looked for leaks everywhere we can. No leaks so far. And that's great. Oh, well, there was one leak just from the fuel pressure sensor, so just tighten that down, and that's taken care of. Doesn't seem like it's coming from anywhere else. I went ahead and put on the upper intake manifold, plugged in all the sensors I have available, and started up the laptop, and we are reading. So, you want to flick the thingy there so we can prime it? Alright, so fuel pressure is coming up right where it should. Of course it drops off because there's no vacuum to keep it running. And then we have intake air temperatures reading, coolant temperatures reading, just ambient. Oil temperatures reading, just ambient. Oil pressure, obviously there's no oil pressure, so it's freaking out. Need to do something about my EGT sensors. They're not communicating right now. We've got the manifold air pressure sensors reading, throttle position. Ooh, let's, can you move the throttle? See if it reads. Please change numbers, please change numbers, please change numbers. Nope. Oh, there it goes. Yep. Yep. Perfect. Throttle position is reading. Battery voltage. I don't know why fuel temperature is going off. I didn't have fuel temperature before. And unfortunately, the flex flow sensor, if I go into the pinout display, it's reading voltage from it, but it just says that it's off. So again, this isn't the laptop that has the main file on it, so maybe it's just weird, but it's yeah, it's reading pretty much everything else. It's trying to control something through a DPO, but it looks like we're almost there as far as getting the computer all set up and everything. I think we're almost done. We need to wire in the wideband, but we're going to do that after. Obviously we have the exhaust made with the bung welded in, but yeah, we're getting pretty close. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Please remember to check the links in the description below. Stay kind to each other out there. When they ask you, tell them you want more.